G'day people, I'm Sharyn and welcome. Once again, big thanks to Velma for letting me use her Janome 550E for these tutorials. The next thing we need to learn how to do is to alter designs on your machine. It's not really too hard to do, but there are a lot of buttons to learn about. Here we are on our home screen, which you can get to by pressing the house button. We've got the flower, which is where you can find all of the designs on the machine, ABC for your lettering, and the grid for your edit screen. We are going to be working in the edit screen today, so let's go in here. There are a lot of buttons on the edit screen, and we're going to work our way through them methodically. In this particular case, we've come up on the edit screen for the 200 by 200 millimeter hoop, but if we wanted to change that, we come down here to the hoop, and here I get complete control over what hoop I want to be using. The bag of hoops that Velma loaned me with this, and I'm not sure if it includes all of the ones that come with the machine. There are definitely some that you can buy as extras, but let's have a look. This one is the one that I did the ballerina in. It is a square hoop and it fits my designs that you can get from my website. This one is the same width as the one I did the ballerina in, but it's about 3 inches or 6 centimetres taller. This one actually fits a lot of the older rectangular designs. This one is the 200 by 200 that I'm using in the edit screen things that I'm showing you today. I unfortunately don't have the template for it. If I did, I could show you that the 20 squares across and down here match up with the 20 squares that you'll see on the edit screen. This one fits my 20 centimetre designs that come in the same set that the 14 centimetre and the 17 and the 23 and the 28 centimetre designs come in. So because it's square, my designs fit in it very nicely. That's what they're intended for. This is enormous. It's 8 inches by about 14 or 15 inches. It's huge. You need to be really careful if you're using this sort of size of hoop, because any position where the fabric is not firmly held, it's going to shift. It's nowhere near as good a hold on your fabric with this as there is on the smaller hoops. If you're going to use those really big hoops, and you may at some point, make sure you put this onto your machine. It's an extender for where the hoops lie on your machine. And if you're doing things on a really, really big hoop, you want that hoop to be supported all of the way around the machine. There is a small hoop about this kind of size, and that's quite handy if you're doing just names, small names on things, and also if you're doing things on baby clothes. So choose the smallest size hoop that your design will fit into. And by that I mean if we put multiple designs together, the smallest size hoop that will contain all of those designs. I actually do want to use the 200 by 200 because it's just easier for me to work with and it shows up better on the screen. So we're going back here and back into the 200 by 200. The first thing I want to do is actually get a design, and I'm going to go to my home screen where the designs are, and I'm going to get the owl, and you can see there's the owl in the middle of the screen. And in all cases when you get a design, it will be brought into the center of the screen. If I want to put 2 things on this screen, I would go back into the house, into the designs, pick up the ballerina, and there she is. Now I've got 2 things in there. I could go back to the house, into the designs, and pick up the dress, and you can see they're all just getting put one on top of the other in the middle. I've got here a bin or a trash can, and whichever design is currently active, and this will be hard for you to see on the screen, but there is a little green line around that mannequin, and if I touch the bin, away she goes. The green line is now around the ballerina. So if I touch the bin, out she goes. There's my owl, the little green line The owl is active. In the bin, it's gone. So to get designs, we go to the house, into the section where the designs are, and we pick up whichever particular design we want. Now, if I send this to the machine at the moment and just stitch it out, the machine believes it's in this hoop, and I go, okay, keep hands clear. The hoop will now move to its centre position. Okay. And this is where it's telling me to check, have I actually got the hoop on it that the machine thinks is on there? I'm not sewing things out. Okay. The ready to sew screen shows me which hoop, how big the design is. So it's 36 millimeters wide by 49 millimeters tall. There are 8 colours. We're stitching at 600 stitches per minute, which is what I set it to in the settings. The design is going to take 9 minutes to stitch out. Tension is on auto. Remember that 8 colours. I'm going to go back now to the edit screen, and there are a couple of ways I can do it. I can press this arrow up, and that takes me back to the edit screen. Alternatively, if we say OK again, I could go from here and go back there. So there are 2 ways for me to get back to that edit screen. I'm going to play with the owl now. This here doesn't seem to be doing anything. This is one of the reasons I really, really like you to keep the bell on, the volume on, because you can hear something seems to be happening, but nothing looks any different. If I go OK now, still just looks like the one owl there, but if you have a look up here, there's 64 colours. I copied him 8 times. So instead of having 8 colours, the machine at the moment wants to stitch out 8 owls, one on top of the other. If we go back to the edit screen, I'm going to use my stylus and pull him off. That was the last one that I put in there. So you can see I was in fact doing lots of copying. The machine doesn't have a paste in it. It just copies and it puts it exactly where the previous one is. So I'm going to touch this one, and I've got a green square around now, and I'm going to bin that one. So let's have a look now. I've got the owl over here. Put him there. I'm going to do this again. It is still putting them exactly on top, so it doesn't bring it back to the centre. On a copy, it will put it exactly where it already is. If I want to get a different one right into the centre, I could go here and pick him up, and that will put one back in the centre. When you're copying, it will put it exactly on top of what you've already got. If you go and get one out of the design list, it will put it in the centre. I have now got 4 owls. I'm pretty sure that's all I've got. And we've already seen here that I can put them in the bin or the trash can. Start with this one up in the top left corner. This tool here is for size. I'm going to take this owl and I'm going to make it as big as I can. At 120% of normal size, that's as big as it goes. It's not going to let me do more. This one here, I'm going to make as small as I can make him. That one's gone down to 80% and it won't let me go any smaller. Okay. If I didn't press OK, by the way, if I'd pressed X, they would have gone back to how they were before I went into that screen. So why does Janome put that sort of a limitation on? 20% bigger or 20% smaller? Well, it's because the machine is not recalculating stitches. It's not a digitizer program. It's just playing with the stitches that are already there. If I take a design and I stretch it out by 20%, you usually can't see a great deal of difference in the quality of the design. If you stretched it further, you start getting gaps. and particularly the underlay does not do what it's supposed to do. So we've got the same number of stitches and we've pulled them apart. Further than 20%, you're going to run into problems. What about in the other direction? I've taken my design and I've squished it in by 20%. Once again, I still haven't taken any stitches out of the design. If I found a way to make it go even smaller, what ends up happening is the needle is doing such short stitches it doesn't make sense. You lose what is supposed to be there. Perhaps an anecdote will help with this. Many years ago, I bought a face washer from Harrods of London. It had a very cute little embroidered bear in one corner of it. Unfortunately, over a period of time, I ended up with a face washer with a hole the shape of the Harrods bear in it, because the density of the stitching was more than the fabric could withstand. So essentially, it perforated the fabric and the fabric fell apart. I had a nice little design still, it was like a piece of cardboard, but it was totally detached from the flannel. Well, how can we use this? Sometimes having a smaller design is important, so we just put up with the fact that there's going to be more stitches closer together. But the other way can really be useful. If you're doing something on a weak fabric or one that perforation could be a problem with, sometimes actually stretching out those stitches and getting them further apart does less damage to your fabric. I would imagine this would be so on leather and plastics and things of that nature. You don't want to punch a hole through your leather the shape of your design. I can go over the page here. I'm going to highlight this one with the little green square, and this is my rotation key, so I can send in 45 degrees that way or 1 degree. I can change him around as much as I like. Okay, with this one I'm going to play with these. So the one that looks like a hamburger, just turned him upside down, so it flips him around that horizontal axis. It might be a little bit harder to see here, but now if I do this one, he's actually flipped around a vertical axis. So now he's facing this way. Turn him back up the right way. So those function keys, size and rotation and flipping, you can take a family of owls and make them something a bit all looking different ways and all sorts of things. I'm not going to be talking about fonts and alphabets today. I'll do that on a different video. Over the page. This one here with the hearts and an arrow. When I go in here, I can choose, at the moment I've got one. There's a green around that one that already had green on it. This one's now got green. I'm going to put green there. And I go, so I haven't done it on this one. And when I say OK, the three that I had indicated are now joined up and I can move them as a bunch. And that means that if I had them all in a nice situation but they were not close enough to that one, I could move them. And you can see that one is greyed out, so it's not part of this group. When I go back here, I'm back to having an individual one. This means that any designs you have that you've got them perfectly worked out together, you can keep them together and shift them as a group. You can see here there's an arrow going into a file. So if I want to save something, I'm going to put it into a file. And if I want to put these owls, how I've got them all set out, into a file, I go in here. It's going to save it in the sewing machine, not the USB. I could tell it to save it in the USB if I wanted to. I can change the name of it. The name it has chosen is M001. I can go in here. We will call it Owls. When I say OK, I have saved the name change. I have not yet saved the design. I need to be in a folder, and when I say OK, I have now saved that into a folder and it's called Owls. I'm not actually going to worry too much about the colour one. It's not something that I find particularly useful, but I do want to show you this one. We have got 4 of the same design. So in the same way that previously when I had 8 owls, or one on top of the other, it was 64 colour changes. This will be, okay, 32 colour changes, and that seems excessive, especially when we know that each of these owls is the same 8 colour changes. So let's go back into the edit screen and we're going to use this. Each of these owls is a long way away from the others, so there's no one on top of another. And that makes it very easy for the machine to work out that yes, they've all got the same series of colour changes, so it can merge them together. If we OK, here we are in the Ready to Sew screen, and there's only 8 colours. If you remember, this button will show me the first colour that's going to stitch out, and there it is. It's the front of each of the owls. If this was still at the 32 colours, it would have only shown one of them, and I would have been working my way through 32 colours. This way it's going to do the same colour on all 4 owls, and when I go to the second colour, it's going to do on all of the owls again. Go back up. That particular key, merging the colours, can only work if the designs have got all their colours in the same order. You couldn't merge a flag that was red, green, blue with one that was red, yellow, blue. The machine wouldn't know how to do it, but it can do this. That is, however, also something it can only do right at the end. So now that we've come back to the edit screen, it's forgotten about it. I forgot to film. If you've got 2 designs that are overlapping, then it can't do it. You would end up with bits and pieces of an owl, one on top of the other. It would look really peculiar. Under those circumstances, when you go to that bit that blends all the colours together, it'll grey some out and say, no, I can't do that. That's its limitation. 1, 2, 3 here gives me the option to tell the machine what order I want them to stitch in. So I could do that one, then that one, then that, and that. It will then remember what order I've told it to do things in. So what does this do for you? Maybe you've put in a rabbit and then you've decided you want to have a tree behind it. And you bring the tree in, and from everything you can see on the screen, the tree's in front of the rabbit, and you need to put them in a different order. By putting the tree as number 1 and the rabbit as number 2, the rabbit will stitch out in front of the tree rather than behind it. I'm going to take this owl here and remove that one. This one, we've got crosshairs with a heart in the middle. This owl is currently active. When I do that, he gets taken to the centre. I'm back down to having 1 owl, and I'm going to do a rotation. I'm going to turn him that way so his head's heading towards the centre. Okay, over here, and I'm going to do this one where the hearts all end up doing weird things, and let's see what it does to our owl. So that way we've got our 4 owls into the 4 corners, and depending on the design you're using, that can make quite good effects. That was choosing which one's going to stitch first, putting it into the centre, and putting it into the 4 corners. This one will change a coloured design into a single coloured design. When you go to the Ready to Sew screen with this one, it will have all of the colours just as one very bland colour. And maybe you're trying to do something where you just want everything stitched in the one colour. Looks a bit weird for owls. It still shows the 32 colour changes. However, it will not stop in between each one and cut the threads. It'll just keep going. Like the melding or merging of the colours over here, that one is one that it does going just before it goes to the Ready to Sew screen, and it doesn't remember it when you come back to the edit screen. And that's the basics of the edit screen. Once again, huge thanks to Valma for letting me use her machine. There's a few more tutorials that I've still got in the works for this machine, and I hope you're enjoying them. See you next time.